What if the version of you that appears after a few drinks was decided long before the first sip? At almost every party, two people show up. One starts hugging strangers. The other starts arguments that didn't exist 10 minutes ago. Same alcohol, same molecule, completely different people. And the answer isn't in the alcohol. It's already inside the brain. Alcohol doesn't reveal who you are. It narrows what your brain can pay attention to. Psychologists call this alcohol myopia. Think of it like switching a floodlight to a flashlight. When sober, the brain handles dozens of inputs at once. Consequences, social cues, other people's reactions, future outcomes, all of it inside the frame at the same time. Alcohol shuts most of that down. The beam narrows, and whatever emotional signal is strongest in that moment, that becomes your entire reality. That one mechanism explains almost everything. So if it's all about what lands in the beam, what signals do most people default to? Researchers at the University of Missouri studied hundreds of drinkers and found 4 consistent drunk personalities. The first was called the Hemingway. Nearly half of all drinkers, these people barely change. Their personality stays mostly intact no matter how much they drink. The second was called Mr. Hyde, the aggressive drinker, most likely to start conflict, experience fights, and develop alcohol-related problems. The third was called the Nutty Professor, quiet introverts who suddenly become social, warm, and outgoing. The biggest personality transformation of all 4 types. And the last was called Mary Poppins, warm, friendly people who stay warm and friendly no matter what. 4 groups, 4 completely different responses, same substance, which means the drink itself isn't deciding the outcome. Something deeper is. Part of the answer begins with a chemical most people have heard of, but almost nobody associates with alcohol. Serotonin acts like a brake on impulsive behavior. It regulates emotional reactions before they turn into actions. In people with naturally lower serotonin levels, that brake is already weaker before the first drink. Researchers demonstrated this directly. In laboratory experiments, participants with temporarily reduced serotonin became significantly more aggressive after consuming alcohol, not because alcohol created the aggression, because the restraint system was already compromised before drinking began. Alcohol didn't change them. It just removed the last thing holding the pattern in check. Researchers have identified a variation of the MAOA gene that's associated with greater impulsive aggression under stress. Alcohol doesn't create that tendency. It simply weakens the systems that normally keep it under control. The genetic setting was already there. The drink just stopped hiding it. But serotonin is only part of the picture. Inside the brain, 2 systems are constantly in conversation. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector. It reacts to danger, hostility, and rejection. The prefrontal cortex, the decision maker. It slows things down. It asks, is this actually a problem? Normally, these 2 systems balance each other, but under alcohol, that communication breaks down. The threat alarm stays loud. The reasoning system goes quiet, which means people who naturally scan for threats, whose brains are wired to notice danger first, may suddenly find themselves reacting to things they would normally let pass. The flashlight doesn't choose a new room. It finds the room the brain already knows best. There's one more piece that shapes the early part of the night. In the first 30 to 60 minutes of drinking, alcohol triggers a dopamine release in the brain's reward pathway. Dopamine doesn't just create pleasure, it amplifies the signal that's already present. Someone entering the night feeling warm and connected becomes warmer. Someone carrying unresolved tension may feel brief relief, followed by heightened reactivity as blood alcohol continues rising. The emotional tone of that first window often sets the trajectory for the rest of the night, which is why the mood someone walks in with matters almost as much as how much they drink. And this is where childhood enters the picture in a way most people never expect. The brain doesn't develop in a vacuum. It learns from the environment it grows up in. Someone who grew up in an unpredictable home where they had to monitor moods, avoid conflict, stay alert may develop a nervous system with a permanently higher baseline threat setting. Even years later, in completely safe environments, the threat detector stays slightly more active. Most of the time, the thinking brain manages it, but alcohol weakens that management. The flashlight narrows, and old patterns become easier to activate. Meanwhile, someone who grew up with consistent safety may have a completely different signal at the center of attention. Connection, warmth, the urge to talk, the urge to tell people they matter. Same drink, different room, different history. But here's where it becomes counterintuitive. Sometimes the drunk personality changes during the same night. The person who was funny at 11 p.m. becomes impossible to be around by 2 a.m. Why? Because alcohol's chemistry changes as it leaves the body. Early in the night, alcohol increases calming signals in the brain, primarily through GABA, a neurotransmitter that reduces activity across the nervous system. But as blood alcohol levels begin falling, the brain compensates. Excitatory systems activate, stress chemistry rises, irritability increases. The person at midnight is not chemically the same person at closing time. The room the flashlight enters has shifted. Researchers took this a step further. In controlled experiments, some participants drank alcohol. Others only believed they drank alcohol. Many of the expected behaviors appeared in both groups. People who thought they were drunk acted drunk even with no alcohol present. Confidence went up, inhibitions dropped, behavior changed, because expectation itself was influencing the brain's output. In cultures where alcohol is strongly associated with aggression, people are more likely to behave aggressively when drunk. In cultures where it isn't, they don't, which means the story a person carries about alcohol matters almost as much as the alcohol itself. And there's a longer-term consequence most people never consider. Research shows that chronic heavy drinking gradually reduces the volume of the prefrontal cortex, the same reasoning system that keeps the threat detector in check. Over months and years, the buffer weakens structurally, which means the patterns that once only appeared at night can begin showing up during the day. The drunk personality doesn't just visit. Over time, without change, it starts to move in. So, what decides which drunk you become? Not the drink, not your tolerance, not a hidden version of yourself waiting to escape. It's the emotional signal your brain has spent years prioritizing. And what's left when the filters that normally manage it begin to shut down? Alcohol doesn't create new patterns. It removes the distance between the person and the patterns that were already there. The flashlight was always in the room. Alcohol just decided when to turn it on. One flashlight, different rooms. And the room your brain enters first may have been chosen long before the party started.